If you've ever dieted in your life, then you probably know that most of your results don't actually last. We've all done those juice cleanses, 1,000-calorie workouts, counted every calorie meticulously for a brief period of time, maybe like 6 weeks, and then had all of that weight stack on back, and normally even more. I've done that cycle personally like tens of times, maybe not hundreds, 10. But if you want to lose weight long term, if you genuinely want to lose it, get to your goal, and then keep it off for the rest of your life, then you're going to have to build lifelong habits. This is really changing your behavior, and this is exactly what I did when I was able to lose 40 pounds, and then nearly 6 years on, I've maintained that. Even though for about 10 years, I thought that weight loss was this very mystical, magical thing, and that my metabolism had to be broken because I couldn't figure it out. Once I actually built these core habits, it was easy. And so I went from my clothes not fitting, feeling like a failure, feeling trapped in my body, to now being the fittest that I've been, being on my pull-ups. I did like 9.5. I've run like multiple half marathons, and I can maintain a very lean physique year round, even after 2 kids. So if you're looking for something like that, where you want to lose the weight and then keep it off and build these habits that last, then keep watching, because I want to share with you my 6-step habit building formula when it comes specifically to weight loss. And the coolest thing about this is you can use this formula to do really anything in your life. Most people think that having discipline or being motivated to do something is something that you either have or you don't. Like being a morning person or a night owl or an introvert or an extrovert or whatever else labels that people use for themselves, without realizing that getting yourself to do what you don't want to do when you don't want to do it is just a skill. Just like driving a car, it's a skill that anyone can learn. You just have to build it in the right way. Otherwise, your habits won't stick. The first step to losing weight and then actually keeping it off is to identify what are your specific constraints to building these habits. And we're going to talk about removing constraints, because this is what the most successful people do when they're building any kind of behavioral change. They're looking at what is the way to make it easy for me to see success. How do I create an environment that makes it more likely to actually do the things that I want to do? And so what I want you to picture is that you're on the mountain edge and you're pushing this huge boulder up a mountain. Every step feels painful, every step is difficult, and the moment that you just stop to like wipe your brow from sweat, that boulder comes back and it tries to push you down. You can make a tiny bit of progress while you're pushing hard, but the moment that you get tired, the moment that you give up, that progress just all goes and the boulder comes back down and crushes you. And so I want to hear in the comments, have you ever experienced this with trying to diet? You're struggling so hard for every single pound that gets lost, and then the weekend comes and it all comes back. Instead, think about that same boulder, but it's perched at the top of the mountain and it's just ready to fly down, gaining more and more momentum. But what's stopping it is all these like tiny little rocks that mean that gravity can't do its work. And what really successful people always do is they look at, how do I remove those little obstacles to success? They work lazier. They make things easier because they see success as inevitable if you remove constraints. And if you're finding things really difficult in your diet, maybe it's just because you're a little bit extra and you're trying to do everything the hard way, rather than going, well, how do I make it easier? And let's identify your specific weight loss constraints right now. And there's going to be 3 main categories that someone falls into. So as you're listening to this, pay close attention to which one you think you are and put it in the comments. The first one is someone who's super consistent with their diet. They eat all the right things. They do everything perfectly, but what they're doing doesn't actually lead to results. Now, this scenario, by the way, is very, very uncommon. But if you are very consistent with your diet, I'm talking about people who you never eat out, you never binge, you never have kind of off-plan foods. Once you say that you're going to do something, you follow through and you do that, but you're just not actually seeing any results on the scales, then you're probably just having the wrong day-to-day foods that are going to lead you to losing weight. And that's good news, because it's much, much easier to change what you're eating than it is to change your ingrained behavior. The second and most common scenario is an inconsistent dieter. So this is someone who's in a lose and a gain cycle constantly. They've done so many different diets. Maybe you know what to do, maybe you don't, but you find yourself flip-flopping in this kind of pendulum, all or nothing behavior constantly. So you might make a little bit of traction, but then like that boulder, all of your progress goes when things feel too difficult. If that's you, please put it in the comments. I would love to hear. And then the third scenario is just a hybrid of both of these things. And to be honest, most people are going to fall into this third category, where they might think they know what they're doing, or their meals aren't really optimized, but they still struggle with consistency. And even if your meals are super dialed in and you know exactly what to do, even if you have read every single book on the planet about plant-based weight loss, and you have a degree from the Cornell Institute, which a lot of people we talk to in our program do, it doesn't mean that you've actually changed your behavior to be able to be consistent. This is much more common than most people realize. Change your behavior isn't easy in and of itself, but you can make it simple when you build habits. Number 2, when it comes to knowing exactly what to do to lose weight, you need to identify your North Star. Whether you struggle with inconsistency in your diet or you're doing everything right and it's just not working, you still need to identify what right looks like in order to know whether you are actually doing something that is going to lead to the weight loss on the scales. And this is going to be your North Star. I'm going to go over this really briefly, but if you want to have a deep dive and learn my exact 4-step framework for how to build weight loss meals and really make out this entire system, then check out the link in the description because I got you. The number 1 weight loss habit is to eat a pound of vegetables every day and to split that pound over 2 meals. I'm talking about non-starchy vegetables like broccoli, cauliflower, green beans, capsicum, onion, mushrooms, the list goes on. These vegetables are low in calories. They're about 100 calories per pound, which means that when you add them to your meals, you will bulk out your meals, which will allow you to feel more full, but also to consume less calories because you're going to push out the calories from the higher calorie elements that would normally make up the same size plate. Math is mathing. If you want to feel more full and satisfied, which is going to lead to your consistency being higher, then you need to eat a ton of potatoes. Potatoes are the most satisfying food on the planet, and contrary to popular belief, they're actually low in calories. They're only about 400 calories per pound. Contrast that with something like bread, which is about 1,400 calories per pound, or peanut butter at 2,800 calories per pound. I don't know why potatoes get the bad rep, but I think that it is because of what most people put on them. If you're deep frying it or you're smothering it in sour cream, then yeah, it's not a low calorie option. But if it's boiled or it's baked without oil, then it is one of the best things that you can be eating on a daily basis. And for me, I try to eat a potato-based meal at least one of my meals. Oftentimes I have potatoes in at least 2 of my meals. The only one that I probably wouldn't do would be breakfast. And I have lots of videos about how I use this system on the rest of my YouTube channel. You also want to have a consistent system of eating 3 meals a day plus snacks. This is going to help you to feel more full and satisfied, which is going to reduce the need to binge. It's going to reduce some of that all-in or all-out behavior that is largely due to hunger. So if we eliminate hunger by eating more potatoes, which is super satisfying, adding bulk by vegetables, and then having consistent meals and consistent meal times with snacks in between as well, then it's automatically going to be easier to stay consistent, which is going to lead to you actually building habits that mean you can lose weight long term. The golden rule of being able to eat as much food as you want without counting calories and still losing weight is to eat foods under 600 calories per pound when it comes to calorie density. This is potatoes, rice, beans, tofu, vegetables, and fruit, and legumes. You want to have a little bit of avocado in there, maybe like half an avocado to a whole avocado a day, when a little bit of fat's kind of sprinkled in. But if you use this formula, you really can eat as much as you want, and most people will get into that weight loss zone. The easiest way to reduce thousands of calories from your diet every single week is to cut out oil. Oil is the highest calorie food on the planet, if you can call it a food. It is about 4,000 calories per pound. You do not need it as a fat source in your diet. There are so many better whole foods alternatives like avocados, like nuts and seeds, like fats in like tofu and edamame. There is absolutely no reason if you are trying to lose weight to be eating the highest calorie food that you're not even going to register in your stomach. So those 5 things are going to be our North Star in determining how consistent we actually are, and then what we need to do in order to move towards that direction. So we've identified what kind of dieter we are, what our weight loss constraints are. We've identified what we need to be at in order to get into that weight loss zone. And now we have to design a home environment that is going to allow that to become a reality. And James Clear, in his book Atomic Habits, says that environment is the hidden hand that shapes behavior. And he also says that disciplined people are not inherently more disciplined. They actually test discipline levels, they test willpower between people, but they find that really disciplined people have a more disciplined environment. Essentially, they're removing rocks so that their discipline can just flow down the hill. And if you think about it in a very simple way, if you struggle with gambling simply by moving to the desert and having no access, maybe the desert's the wrong place. I mean, Las Vegas is in the desert. But moving somewhere where there's no slot machines and you can't go and gamble is probably the easiest way to actually quit that habit. Environment is powerful, and it's much easier to use environment to shift your behavior than it is to change your behavior when the environment stays the same. So the first thing that you want to do to get more consistent is to remove the foods that tempt you. If you have chips and chocolate in your cupboard right now, if you have ice cream in your freezer, and you have a habit of eating those foods, a default habit, an ingrained behavior pattern, when you feel sad, when you've had a hard day at work, when the kids have been annoying, if you pour yourself a glass of wine, then you need to create some kind of obstacle between yourself and that behavior. This is how we break a habit. You're designing a home environment that propels you to success, not actually pulls away from it. You also want to set this schedule where you know exactly what your 3 meals and your snacks are going to be, so that you're not using tons of brain power to make those decisions in the moment. So for me, which you can watch this video recently that I did, where I've dialed in my habit system so freaking hard that it's so easy. I know exactly what I'm going to eat every day. You got to kind of do the same thing, where even if you don't eat the same thing every day, you know what your breakfast looks like on a Monday, for example, or you know what your 2 options are. You know what your lunch looks like. You know what kind of foods you eat. You know what you're going to be having on a Thursday night at dinner. You know when you need to start that. You're essentially building a routine and you're making it consistent so that you don't have to think about what you're going to do. You're just focused on actually implementing. You may have heard the term that failure to plan is planning to fail. And it's very, very true. I see so many people who say, well, I can't stay consistent, but they've never set a system of what they even want to be consistent for. When you're setting up your environment to create habits, you want to create some kind of rolling prep system. Rolling prep does seem to be the easiest form of preparation when it comes to having the foods ready to go for you to eat. Basically what that means is that once you run out of one food, you cook up another. So I don't need to cook up a ton of vegetables. I don't need to make my oats the night before. Everything's kind of ready to go in that department. But the things that are going to take a while are potatoes, rice, potentially beans. So I make sure that I have a rolling prep system where the moment that I run out of potatoes in my fridge, I cook up more. The moment that I run out of tofu that is ready to go, my tofu takes me like 2 minutes. I'm going to link a recipe in the description, and I'm freaking obsessed with this, but I just prep more right then and there. So what it ends up meaning is that my prep for my entire week really only takes me like 20, 30 minutes, and it's spread out in like 10-minute chunks throughout my entire week, and I don't even ever have to think about it because it's the same thing every time. And then I can mix up my condiments and I can add variety in the vegetables and the potatoes that I'm eating, like sweet potatoes, Japanese sweet potatoes, white potatoes, but it doesn't require any brain space. Now, that's our home environment. That's what we're going to be doing on a day-to-day basis when we're at home. But what about when you leave the house? And this is where a lot of people get tripped up. But it is still the same formula. You just have to plan what you're going to do, and then you've got to stay consistent to it by making it easy. So we call this a leaving the house system. When you leave the house, have some kind of system of what you're going to bring with you so that you're creating an if this, then that statement. And this is another way that habits work. If I feel a craving, then I will eat a donut. If I leave the house, this is a positive one, then I will bring a microwave potato so that if I get hungry and I'm out for hours, I won't go through the drive-thru. Instead, I will eat my microwave potato. The key with if, this, then statements and habits in general is that they have to be 100% consistent. So even if you were just leaving the house for 5 minutes to go pick up your kids from school, it's going to feel super arbitrary, but you want to do the same action that you would do if you were going to leave the house for 6 hours. This is how you retrain your brain to not have to think about your behavior and not have to work so hard all the time. And it will be a lot of effort in the beginning, but eventually your brain just kicks into autopilot, and that's where habits become lifelong. You're also going to need to create some kind of eating out system. So for myself and what I do, because I eat out quite a lot, I eat out at least these days once a week, sometimes twice a week. I choose to go to places where I can get foods that are not going to derail my progress, mostly like Korean or Thai restaurants. I also go to like this kind of sushi chain, and I do a combination of bringing food with me and then adding components, or I get some kind of soup that is oil-free and I get a side of vegetables and then I get rice. So I'm still eating the same kind of system that I would at home, and I know what I'm going to do when I eat out. Now, you don't have to always eat out this way, but you still have to be systematized about it so that you're not constantly falling back into your old patterns of behavior. Because what are we trying to do? We're trying to break our old patterns. We're trying to form new behaviors. So we have to know what we're going to do in those scenarios. If you want to eat out, schedule it. If you're going to have some wine sometimes, if you're not going to be 100% consistent with your diet, totally fine. I do the same thing. But I know how often I want to do that a month. I know that during the week, I'm not going to be eating desserts and treats. I know that on the weekend, I can be a little bit more lenient, but I'm planning that in. I know that Saturday morning, I'm probably going to go to the markets and maybe eat some bread. There's some amazing sourdough in my town. And when the avocado season is there and we go to the farmer's market, but I plan it in. I know that it's going to happen. And it's one event that doesn't derail the rest of my week. It doesn't lead to a binge because it's planned. It's there. The fifth thing when you're building habits is that you need to create some kind of commitment device. This is the negative consequence to you not following through on whatever plan that you've set. This is a if this, then that, and it's a negative situation. This is how we learn. If you think about touching a hot stove, the reason that you know not to do that is because when you did, it was painful. So we're teaching ourselves the same concept. We just have to set up a system that does it. And all a commitment device is a decision that you make when you are like sure that you want to do it. When you're in your best self, you're like, yep, I want to lose weight, I want to lose 20 pounds, whatever it is, New Year's resolution. You make the goal, you make the plan, and then the commitment device is that when it feels really difficult to do, when you're emotional, when you're stressed, when it's 5 a.m. and you don't want to get up to the gym, or you're like craving pizza and you're driving past the pizza place, but you have a potato next to you, the commitment device is what holds you through that impulse and then keeps you committed to whatever goal you set for yourself. They are incredibly powerful. I actually believe that commitment devices are vital if you want to change your behavior because we're more motivated by avoiding pain than we are seeking pleasure. Think of this as like a cat and mouse scenario. You're a mouse and there's a cat chasing you. You're more motivated to run because there's a cat there, because there's a negative situation, than you are to run towards cheese. So think negative motivation as opposed to positive motivation. You can easily do this by telling a lot of people what you're going to do because there will be a negative consequence if you lose face and you don't follow through on it. So what I like to do is I always tell people what my plans are. If I say I'm gonna run a marathon, I'm gonna sign up for that marathon like now when I think of it because it's a commitment device to most likely mean that I actually have to train. I made a commitment device for YouTube this year where if I didn't put out a YouTube video every single week by 12 a.m. on a Saturday, New Zealand time, that I would have to pay $100 to a charity that I didn't like. And because of that habit, I've seen my channel grow. Another way to have some kind of commitment device is to join a coaching program or be involved in a group of people where they are propelling you forward, where you have competition, where you feel like you have to do something, otherwise someone's going to be disappointed in you. And I know people don't like this, but it works, and there's no reason to think that it's negative. It works. We're just motivated by pain. It's not good, it's not bad, it's just the way that it is. Okay, so we're motivated by pain, but we get confirmed in our behavior through reward. This is what is super key, and I think this is a piece that most people miss, is that they do the opposite. They try to reward themselves or motivate themselves by reward, by saying, like, you got this in the mirror, like positive affirmations. But then when they don't follow through on something 100% or they're not perfect, then they just absolutely negatively berate themselves. Like, you terrible person, like that wasn't good enough. And then that leads to some kind of like spiral in terms of behavior. It doesn't work. And here's why. While our brains are forming habits, the reason that our brains know to continue a behavior is we get a dopamine spike. So if you find it really easy to check your phone when you get a notification, it's because of that. Your brain taught you over hundreds, if not thousands of instances that the ding on your phone means you got a message, therefore you check it, therefore you got dopamine. That's why you do it over and over again. So we want to create the same scenario when we're building habits so that they can last. Imagine if your weight loss habits were as satisfying for you as picking up your phone when you were bored. That's what we're trying to create because it works. The key piece about rewarding behavior is to reward inputs rather than outputs. A lot of people make the mistake here where they will reward, if I get to a certain weight loss goal, then I can buy new jeans, or maybe then I can like have like a splurge or something like that. Whereas that's rewarding an output that you don't have direct control over. Instead, you want to reward the inputs that you can do today. So rather than when I hit this weight loss goal, I will get this reward, you want to have, I will put a sticker on a star chart when I eat a potato. I will give myself a high five when I get to the gym and do 10 minutes because I walked through the gym doors. I will be able to mark off on a habit tracker, which is what we do for our clients inside Elena Plants, every single day that I eat my pound of vegetables because that is a habit that is then going to lead to long-term results. Maybe you've got some ideas spiraling in your head right now about how you could reward inputs rather than outputs. So let me know what they are in the comments and maybe we can learn from each other. Here's a little story about how powerful this is. It's not anything to do with weight loss, but it's kind of fun. So my team and I, and also my husband Nick, and really everyone just in my life that I love, I am basically asking people in my life to ask better questions, ask more curious questions, because I believe the better the questions that we ask, the more we know what we need to do to succeed. And also it helps to make people feel loved. So something that we do now is that when someone asks a great question, we will give them what we call a treat. And a treat is just like, great question. Wow, that was amazing. Thanks for asking that. And what I've seen happen is that my husband now is asking me so many questions. He is becoming more and more interested in me, because every time that he does and I see the behavior that I want to have more of, I'm like, wow, thank you for asking me that. Wow, that was amazing. Like, I really appreciate you saying that. And so he's now actually being rewarded. He's getting treats and he's building habits and behavior. And I do the same thing for myself. Rewards work. We are reward junkies. So use this to your advantage and you're going to make it so much easier for yourself to see success. And a final note, habits are just behaviors repeated thousands of times that they become autopilot. Most people have habits that are not intentional. When you scroll on your phone, when you eat a donut when you're sad, when you bite your nails, whatever it is, they're not intentional. They're just things that environment or circumstance has almost forced upon us that are now just parts of our lives. But if you want to create intentional behaviors, intentional habits that go against the grain, that allow you to achieve the goals that you want to, which is worth it, by the way. It is work. It is work while you are building them. It is going to take a lot of brain space and an intentional effort to set up environments that allow that to be easier so that you can see success. But once you do it, you don't have to think much about it. We can design systems that make it possible for us to change our behavior, which means we can create new, unshakable default patterns that lead to whatever goal you want to have for yourself, where you have 100% certainty that you can actually maintain that. And I would say that that is freedom. If you found this helpful, then please let me know in the comments which of these things you're going to start implementing. And if you want more behavioral change tools, then I go super deep in my podcast. So you can check out the description for the link of that too. Go build some habits, go microwave a potato right now, and I'll see you next week for another video. Okay, bye.